Okay, so picture this for a second. You wake up, you stumble into your kitchen, your hair's a total mess, you're super
Right,
groggy.
the usual morning routine.
Exactly. And you really just want coffee. But instead of a pot brewing, you're staring at this machine, waiting for your latte to, well, to print.
Literally print, layer by layer.
The layer by layer. And while you're standing there and you're stressing out about some big audition, you look out the window and it's not birds chirping out there.
Oh no, it's drums.
Drones just whizzing by like, I don't know, hummingbirds on caffeine. And then you look down at the sidewalk and it's not just people walking their dogs, it's walking hologram advertisement, just cluttering up the whole street.
It really sounds like the cover of one of those old sci-fi magazines from the 1950s, doesn't it? That shiny, hyper-efficient future we were all supposedly promised.
It does, yeah. It sounds really cool on paper.
Mhm.
But then you look across the breakfast table and you start to realize this high-tech utopia has a very ugly price tag attached to
A
it.
massive price tag.
Today we are doing a deep dive into the source material from Range Error, behind the curtain, specifically looking at Chapter 15. And let me tell you, this narrative takes that shiny future concept and just completely twists the knife.
It absolutely does. We're so used to looking at, white papers or tech specs on this show, but fiction often captures the actual feeling of the future way better than any standard forecast could.
Totally.
And this chapter is heavy. It paints a picture of a society that is just split right down the middle. You have the first, which is where our main characters live, wealthy, clean, doing this agile working thing in the metaverse. And then right across the divide, you have the third.
And the third is, well, let's just say it's not where you want to have a summer home.
No, definitely not.
So our mission today is to really unpack this specific chapter. We want to understand the domestic psychology of this divide, and we're going to do that by looking at a character named Grace, her pretty dysfunctional family, and this very strange, almost metaphysical experience she has while out for a run.
Yeah, it's a story about inequality at its core. But specifically, it's about how we use technology to hide from our own guilt, the walls we build. And not just concrete walls, but digital ones.
Right. So let's get right into that kitchen scene. The chapter actually opens with a power cut, which I love because it just immediately undercuts that perfect future vibe.
The printed coffee machine literally stops working.
Exactly. So we're with Grace, her dad Michael, and her mom Erin. And Erin is, wow, she is in a mood.
To put it mildly, yeah. They are having a discussion about Grace's grandmother.
Right.
And this conversation is really our first clear look at how this society functions on an emotional level.
Erin is just listing all these reasons why she flat out refuses to physically visit her. And it's not just about it being inconvenient.
No, it's super visceral. I have my notes right here, actually. She talks about this cold, damp musk that soaks into your pores. She actually says you can't wash the smell off. That is so intense. She's acting like poverty is some kind of physical contagion. Well, that's a really specific psychological reaction.
Huh.
It's called disgust sensitivity. In these highly stratified societies, the elite class often views the underclass not just as lesser, but as literally contaminated.
Wow.
Yeah. Aaron describes the whole journey to the third as an absolute nightmare, waiting 20 minutes for a transport pod and having to share it with these unwashed, unkempt, ominous-looking mass strangers. I mean, she uses the word filthy.
It's the ultimate us versus them mentality. But then she drops this detail that really stuck with me. She complains about their masks. She says, and I'm quoting here, the noise of those masks, I can't understand a word they say.
That is such a fascinating bit of world building by the author. The text doesn't explicitly spell out if these are gas masks for pollution or if there's some kind of tech linguistic filter, but the actual effect is what matters. It strips away communication entirely.
Right, because if you can't understand someone, they sort of stop being a person to you. They just become noise.
Exactly. Aaron says something like, there's no telling the lengths desperate people will go to. She views them as a literal security threat simply because she can't communicate with them. It becomes a very convenient barrier.
A barrier by design, almost.
Precisely. If you build a system where the poor are completely unintelligible, you never actually have to listen to their grievances. It's a feature of the society, not a bug.
So, because she can't handle the smell or the noise of these masks, what does Erin do? She visits via VR visitation.
This is where the tech becomes a crutch for emotional distance. She puts on a virtual reality headset to see her own mother because the physical reality involves climbing 15 flights of stairs, which she casually dismisses as fire escapes.
Just to reach a pokey little shipping container.
Right.
A shipping container. I mean, just let that sink in for you listening. The daughter is sitting in a smart home waiting for printed coffee, and her mother is living in a stacked metal box.
And the VR allows Erin to essentially edit that reality. She even mentions that the VR keeps her mother young. She's consuming this sanitized, highly edited digital version of her mother because the biological reality, the smell, the container, the aging, it's just too uncomfortable for her to process.
It's like she's photoshopping her life in real time. But the dad, Michael, he seems a bit different. He's not the one ranting about the smell.
No, Michael represents the systemic guilt of the first. He is described as the glue holding the family together, but paradoxically, he's also the engine of the problem, because he works for TheoCorp.
Which honestly sounds like every ominous mega corporation in every sci-fi story ever.
It really does. He's responsible for a project called Zero, which is the world's only carbon-neutral energy facility. So, on one hand, he is literally the guy keeping the lights on for civilization,
Right.
but you can clearly see the stress weighing on him. He hands over a carbon credit card for the grandmother, but the text specifically notes his expression is laced with guilt.
It's such a sad, hollow gesture. Just, here, have some credits. I can't get you out of the shipping container, but here's a gift card.
He knows it's nowhere near enough.
Yeah.
Erin is completely detached from where her privilege even comes from, just living in her bubble. But Michael is knee-deep in the actual machinery of it. He's tasked with ensuring a safe environment for the whole world, but he can't even ensure a comfortable living environment for his mother-in-law.
And Grace, our main protagonist, is just sitting there at the table watching this whole dynamic play out. She sees her dad carrying the literal weight of the world, and then she looks over at her mom, who is completely obsessing over, what was it, Grace's hair.
Yeah, the audition, which really shows the other side of the coin in the first. If you aren't struggling for basic survival, you are struggling for status. Erin is fixing Grace's hair and tells her, "You could be so beautiful if you tried."
Oh man, if you tried, that has got to hurt coming from your mom.
It's all about performance. In this world, your appearance is a form of currency. You have to look the part of the elite class. Erin is terrified that if Grace doesn't polish up and play the game, she might slip down the ladder. It just emphasizes that the first isn't just a place of luxury, it's a place of immense, crushing pressure to conform.
Okay, so breakfast is obviously a disaster. They finally leave the house, and this is where we get a real look at the world outside. We mentioned the coffee printing earlier, but the tech integration in their daily lives is just total.
It is everywhere. They have this agile working model where school happens in the metaverse 2 days a week. But on the days they physically commute to school, the Send3 overload is overwhelming.
Yeah, Grace is out there physically dodging walking AdWords. Can you imagine walking down the street and a human-sized hologram just pops up in your face trying to sell you a new VR headset? It's like internet pop-up ads, but you can't install an ad blocker because they are physically standing in front of you.
It creates this intense sense of intrusion. Even the public physical space is commodified. It's noisy, it's busy, and overhead, those drones are constantly buzzing. It paints a picture of a world that is highly efficient, sure, but also incredibly cluttered and anxious.
And then they arrive at her school, Harrow. And the visual description of this place is wild. It's this old Victorian building crowning a hilltop, but it's being maintained by, what, construction bots?
Yes, tireless bots that are constantly layering 3D limestone prints over the walls to repair damage from what they call the troubles, and also from regular dust storms.
No troubles.
Yeah, that gives us a huge hint about the history of this world. There was some kind of massive collapse or conflict, and now they're using advanced 3D tech to literally patch up the crumbling remnants of the old world.
It feels very precarious, like they're 3D printing Band-Aids on a crumbling dam.
Exactly. And right in the courtyard, there's a statue that sums this entire society up perfectly. It's a majestic willow tree, but it's made entirely of crystal, water, and light.
Grace calls it an opulent glass truck spouting branches, right?
She does. It's beautiful. It's refracting light and rainbows all over the courtyard. But Grace specifically notes that it is lifeless. It's the perfect symbol of the first. Technically impressive, visually stunning, but completely lacking any organic soul. It's artificial nature built for a society that has probably destroyed the real thing.
Now, we really have to talk about the students themselves, because this is where the inequality moves from, oh, my grandma lives in a box, to, oh, wow, this entire system is fundamentally rigged. Grace and her brother Resnick get to go to the school physically 3 days a week. But the kids from the third.
They're essentially ghosts in the system. The text points out that kids in the third aren't so lucky. There are no schools over there. None at all.
Wow.
So their entire education consists of joining lessons remotely as observers.
Observers.
Like,
That specific word just sends a chill down my spine.
it really should. It changes the concept of education from a participatory right into a spectator sport.
Mm.
And here is the real kicker. They can't just raise a digital hand and speak. They have to submit all their questions through AI moderators.
So you have a kid sitting in a metal shipping container, genuinely trying to learn, and if they have a question, an algorithm decides if their voice is even worth being heard.
Precisely. The system actively filters the interaction. So the kids in the first, like Grace and her brother, they might never actually hear a real, unfiltered thought from a kid in the third. The AI acts as a digital buffer. It sanitizes the poor in the exact same way Erin's VR headset sanitizes her mother.
It creates this massive echo chamber. The rich kids probably think they're getting diverse perspectives because kids from the third are in the virtual room, but really they're only getting the approved AI-filtered questions.
It trains the children of the third to be silent, and it trains the children of the first to completely ignore them. It is a profoundly effective way to maintain a strict class divide without ever having to use physical force. You just hit mute on the opposition.
But Grace, she really seems to be noticing things that everyone else is ignoring. There's this moment where she pauses to look at the school motto. And I love this part because usually school mottos are just, Latin gibberish embroidered on a blazer, but she actually stops and breaks it down.
This is a crucial insight into Grace's character. She's not just blindly absorbing the propaganda, she's actively analyzing it. The motto is Stat Fortuna Domomus Dorm Dispensio Fidelis.
Which translates roughly to what?
It translates to, let the fortunate of the house stand the faithful stewardship of the gifts of God. Now, most people in her privileged world probably read that as, we are rich because we are blessed, so we deserve all this.
Right, it's the classic divine right justification. I have my printed coffee and my metaverse because I'm inherently special.
Exactly. But Grace sees it differently. She sees a hidden instruction in it. She really focuses on that word stewardship. She notices a subtle linguistic alternation. So instead of seeing it as a celebration of their high status, she interprets it as a direct command to stand up and be counted.
She thinks it's about duty then.
Yes. She believes those words are magnetic. She thinks they are placed there to highlight one's own error or bias. If you are fortunate, you have a massive debt. You have a responsibility to the unfortunate. It implies that all people are equal and responsible for each other, which is a radically dangerous interpretation in a society that is so clearly built on systemic inequality.
It's like she's reading the terms and conditions of her own privilege and realizing that everyone else around her is violating the contract.
That is a brilliant way to put it. She even wonders about the original designer of that motto. She feels like the words themselves are a gateway, very similar to something she calls Mobius.
Okay, yes, Mobius. This is where the story takes a very hard left turn into something a lot more strange. Grace goes to her PE class, she starts running on the track, and suddenly we aren't talking about social structures and AI moderators anymore. We are talking about consciousness.
The shift is definitely jarring, but it's important. The PE class itself is chaotic. You have the short-tempered teacher, Miss Gillingham, shouting at everyone. It's a very grounded physical scene. But once Grace really hits her stride on the track, she enters the flow, or what she refers to as Mobius.
And she describes it as swimming through the thoughts and perspective of another.
While she's running in this state, she visualizes this peculiar floating book, which she identifies as the Sumerian Kings List.
Okay, pause on that. The Sumerian Kings List, that is a real, actual historical artifact, right? I vaguely remember hearing about this from a history class.
It is very real. It's an ancient clay tablet that lists the kings of Sumer. But the fascinating thing about it is that it blends historical fact with pure myth. Some of the kings on the list are recorded as reigning for tens of thousands of years. So it represents the blending of the human and the divine, or history and legend.
So why on earth is a teenage girl living in this hyper-futuristic high school seeing a 4,000-year-old tablet floating in her head while jogging?
It strongly suggests that she is tapping into something much older and much deeper than the metaverse. She's accessing some kind of collective unconscious or a data stream that definitely isn't her own memory. It connects her to the deep human past in a world that is exclusively obsessed with the immediate tech future.
And she also mentions someone named 87 while she's in this state.
Right. She notes that 87 had said changes in Mobius didn't cross over into the real world. But Grace actively disputes this with 87. She feels that what happens in this mental space does actually matter. It deepens the mystery of the world. It sets up this great conflict between Grace and the established rules of this mental space.
But while she is swimming in this state, she has this sudden philosophical epiphany about Archimedes. And honestly, this was the part of the source material that made me just stop and rewind.
It's a profoundly deep moment. She thinks about Archimedes, the ancient mathematician, literally giving his life to protect his vision, his circles drawn in the sand when a soldier came to kill him. And from that, she concludes that people in her world have creation completely back to front.
Back to front. What exactly does she mean by that?
She looks at her own parents. Her mother needs the VR headset to feel okay about her life. Her father needs the Zero facility to keep the physical world running. They are completely dependent on their creations they have to consume to survive. Grace realizes that true creative energy isn't a dependency, it's an overflow.
An overflow.
She thinks it mushrooms out of you. It's not something you take from the world, it's something you give to it. It's an abundance that spills over, which is a complete reversal of the endless consumerist mindset of the first.
That is so powerful. Her entire world is built around consumption, consuming energy, consuming VR content, consuming the actual labor and space of the third. And Grace is out there on a track thinking about creation as a fundamentally generous act.
Exactly. While her mother is using advanced technology to escape from reality, Grace is using her own internal technology, her mind, this Mobius state, to connect with something way deeper, something historic. She is finding freedom inside herself, while everyone else around her is desperately looking for it inside a headset.
It really highlights how isolated Grace actually is from her family. Her mom is literally in the clouds waiting for printed coffee. Her dad is grounded by this massive corporate guilt. And Grace is she's somewhere else entirely.
She is navigating the space between them all. She clearly sees the walls, the physical walls keeping the third out, and the mental walls her mother puts up every day. And she seems to be the only person in her society actually looking for a door.
I want to circle back to those masks in the third for a second. We touched on it earlier, but I just can't stop thinking about the mom saying, I can't understand a word they say. In a world with this much advanced tech universal translators, AI moderators, how is that even possible?
It strongly suggests that it is willful ignorance, or perhaps the technology of the first is intentionally designed not to be compatible with the tech in the third. We actually see early versions of this today with digital divides, certain apps that won't run on old phones, or platforms that geo-block and exclude certain regions.
But in the story, this is completely weaponized. It's not just, oh, your phone is an older model. It's your actual human voice is incompatible with my curated reality.
Precisely. If you render an entire population voiceless, you effectively strip them of their humanity. And if they're voiceless, you don't have to feel bad about leaving your own mother in a shipping container. It's a psychological defense mechanism that is quite literally built into the hardware.
That is terrifying. It's like having the ultimate real-life mute button on human suffering.
And look at the school system again. If the kids in the third can only submit questions through an AI moderator who is deciding which questions actually get through.
Right, the algorithm. Or rather, the wealthy people who program the algorithm.
Exactly. The system actively filters the human interaction. So the first kids, like Grace, they might never hear a real, unfiltered cry for help from a kid in the third. They are kept completely insulated by design.
Which makes Grace's Mobius experience even more important. Because if she can actually feel the unfiltered thoughts of others, if she can swim through their perspectives, as she says, she might be the only person capable of bypassing that AI filter.
She is bypassing digital censorship with raw biological empathy. That is her superpower, and it's also potentially her biggest danger. Because in a system entirely built on separation, connection is a revolutionary act.
So we have this society that has somehow solved energy with the Zero facility. They've solved construction with these 3D limestone printing bots, and they've solved boredom with the metaverse. But they haven't solved the basic human problem of just treating your neighbor like a human being.
If anything, they have weaponized their solutions to make that human problem easier to ignore. And that is the range error that is hinted at in the title. A range error in computing happens when a number is outside the allowable limits of the system. Here, the societal inequality has gone completely outside the limits of humanity. The system is crashing, but only Grace seems to be able to hear the error noise.
Wow. Outside the limits of humanity. That's a pretty heavy thought for a Tuesday.
It is heavy, but it's exactly what the text demands we look at.
So where does this leave us at the end of the chapter? We have Grace running on a track, connecting with ancient Sumerian kings, and questioning the very nature of human creativity. We have her brother Resnick, who is just eating a croissant and totally oblivious to it all. And we have the parents caught in their own separate traps of vanity and guilt.
It leaves us standing right on the precipice of change. The status quo described in this chapter, the printed coffee, the VR commute, the massive class separation, it all feels incredibly fragile. Grace feels that fragility. She sees the life support machine quality of their entire world.
She actually calls it that, right? She says Hydra, which I assume is the name of their city, feels like a life support machine.
Yes. And just think about that metaphor for a second. A life support machine inherently implies that the patient is actively dying. The 3D prints slapping limestone on the school walls, the VR installation keeping the grandmother in the shipping container. These are just temporary patches. They aren't cures. The patient is critical.
It really makes you think about our own patches in the real world. We don't have printed coffee just yet, unfortunately, but we definitely have the ability to filter our social feeds, choose what news we see, and just ignore what's uncomfortable.
We do. We are all the learner in this scenario. The real question is, are we learning like Aaron, just learning how to avoid the smell of truth? Are we using our incredible tools just to curate a comfortable little bubble? Or are we learning like Grace, trying to actually decipher the hidden instructions in the statues and the silence around us?
That's the real challenge, isn't it? To stand up and be counted, just like the school motto says.
Indeed. To be a faithful steward of the gifts we have, rather than just being a passive consumer of them?
Well, we have unpacked a lot of complex layers here today. Everything from the domestic awkwardness of a dystopian breakfast to the literal metaphysical freedom of a runner's high. It is such a fascinating glimpse into a world that feels both impossibly futuristic and, honestly, uncomfortably familiar.
That is the mark of the best kind of fiction. It uses the far future to talk directly about the present. It holds up a mirror to us and asks, do you recognize this reflection?
Absolutely. So for you listening, here's a thought to take with you as you go about your day. Maybe while you're waiting for your own coffee to brew, hopefully not print.
We talked a lot today about how technology in this story creates immense distance. The VR headsets, the AI moderators filtering out the poor, the drones buzzing overhead. But Grace actually finds true connection through an internal state, through Mobius.
So here's the question for you to mull over. If we have technology that allows us to see anywhere and experience anything like VR or the metaverse, does it actually help us build genuine empathy? Does seeing a highly curated simulation of another world make us care more about it? Or, like Erin visiting her mother in a virtual room, does it just become another high-tech way to distance ourselves from the grit and the smell of the truth?
Are we using our tools to build bridges to each other, or are we just building higher walls with much better screens?
Definitely something to mull over. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Always a pleasure to be here.
We'll catch you on the next one. Stay curious.